The cold nearly took her, until a human held out his hand. The snow spoke in silence, not in the poetic sense, though her people did have 312 words for the way snow fell, but in the literal, aching hush of sound, swallowed by a landscape too cold to bother with echoes. She lay still in it, breath shallow, vision blurred by the crystalline halo forming on her lashes. The cold was an old companion now. It gnawed without cruelty. She supposed that made it better than most of her kind. One ear twitched, the elongated curve brushing against ice. It was the only part of her body she hadn't lost feeling in. She guessed it would be the last to freeze, which felt unfair. She had liked her ears once, ornate, sensitive, elegant. Now they just ached like the rest of her. She had stopped keeping track of time after the second blackout. Her body was running on subroutines now, conserving energy, rationing warmth, halting non-essential processes like healing and hope. The last message from her neural core had been optimistic, host integrity compromised, termination likely. It had displayed in her vision with a blinking cartoon skull. Lauren engineers had always had a grim sense of humor. She had found that funny in a detached way. Her last laugh had fogged the inside of her rebreather until the unit froze. That had been the end of oxygen recycling. After that, it was just her lungs against the wind. She closed her eyes and let the black behind her lids take over. It didn't hurt. Not exactly. Pain had a beginning and an end. This was more like falling endlessly through something thick and soft and too full of silence. Then came the voice. "Oh, come on. Again. Seriously, you're not a moose either." It was the kind of voice that only existed far from civilization, roughened by cold, honed by sarcasm, and just loud enough to scare off bears. The crunch of boots on snow followed, slow and tentative. "Oh, good. A body. Perfect. Just what I wanted for breakfast." She didn't respond, not because she couldn't, but because she wasn't convinced he was real. It seemed unlikely. Hallucinations didn't usually smell like diesel and pine sap. Another voice joined the first, fainter, filtered through a tiny speaker. "Donovan, what did you find? Please tell me it's not another snowman with your face on it." "Negative, Shell. Got something weird. Female humanoid. Definitely not from around here." There was a pause, then static, then, like, not Canadian. Donovan snorted. "Like pointy ears and weird suit, not Canadian." She felt warmth near her cheek. An infrared scan, probably. She twitched again, the boots shuffled. "Oh, she's alive, sort of breathing at least." "You breathing, snow elf?" He crouched. She opened her eyes slowly. His face hovered above her, red-cheeked and alarmed, with a beard that looked like it had survived 3 divorces and at least 1 chainsaw accident. He was wrapped in layers of patchy winter gear, one glove duct-taped at the wrist. "Okay, not. Dead, I think. Shelley, I'm bringing her in." "Bringing her in where?" The voice crackled. "Where do you think? My place. Unless you think she's got a space hotel reservation in the next snowdrift. You can't just..." "Donovan, this is exactly how horror movies start. Technically, they start with teenagers making bad decisions. I'm a grown man with a shovel and poor boundaries. Totally different genre." He started to lift her. She tried to object weakly, without sound, but he was already bundling her like an oversized burrito of regret. The world went sideways. The cabin smelled like everything she didn't understand about humanity. Burnt oil, old coffee, wet socks, and was that peanut butter? It wasn't unpleasant exactly, just cluttered in a way Lauren's ships never were. She lay on a sagging couch near a sputtering fireplace. A thick blanket cocooned her, but her muscles refused to stop shaking. Donovan hovered in the background, muttering at an ancient-looking heater. "Come on, you overpriced toaster. Don't make me regret stealing you from that FEMA auction." The heater wheezed to life. Warm air licked at her frozen toes. He turned to her, hands on hips. "So you speak? Blink once for yes, twice for no, or I guess just say something." Her voice rasped up from a throat that had nearly iced over. "Where is this?" He flinched. "Oh, good English. That's convenient. This is my humble abode. Welcome to Donovan's world of poor life choices. Population, you, me, and one radio tower that occasionally yells at me." She tried to sit. Her body disagreed. He rushed forward. "Easy. Snow elf. You're in rough shape. Probably hypothermic. Might even have a brain slushy going on. Not that I'm judging. I've tried to cook ramen outside before. Big mistake." "Not elf," she said through gritted teeth. He tilted his head. "Could have fooled me. You've got the ears. Kind of a fantasy vibe. All you need is a bow and a disdainful opinion about humans." She gave him the look that said she already had one. He raised his hands. Okay, not an elf. So what are you?" She didn't answer. Her tongue felt like it was made of rubber. She looked away. He sighed and turned back toward the kitchenette, rummaging through cabinets. "You don't have to tell me. Honestly, not even the weirdest thing that's happened out here. Once watched a raccoon steal my keys, then open my snowmobile." She stared. "I swear, little bastard was smarter than most of my exes." He returned with a steaming mug. "Soup. Well, technically broth. I'm not much of a chef. Just sip it slowly, unless your species doesn't do chicken." "Do you do chicken?" She took the mug with trembling fingers. "We did not evolve around chickens. Your loss. Chickens are weird but delicious, like feathery goblins that scream." She tasted the broth. Salt and warmth hit her tongue like a memory. She swallowed and closed her eyes. "Name's Donovan, by the way. No last name unless you count Stop Touching That." She opened her mouth. The name refused to come. It was too heavy, too wrapped in failure. She shrugged instead. "No name, huh? All right, I'll just call you Snow Elf," she scowled. "Or not. How about Vara? It sounds alien-y, but not too weird, like someone who could blow up a moon and still make great coffee." She considered. Vara wasn't her name, but not a bad one either. She nodded, just once. "Cool. Now don't take this the wrong way, Vara, but if you start glowing, levitating, or trying to eat my face, I'm legally allowed to panic." Her eyes narrowed. "Hey, fair warning, I've seen movies." Vara let the corner of her mouth lift, just barely, and for the first time since the crash, she didn't feel like dying anymore. Vara awoke to an argument between a kettle and a human. The kettle hissed indignantly. The human hissed louder. Neither was winning. "Oh, come on, you ancient steam goblin. Just boil like you mean it." She blinked, her vision unfurling in layers. The cabin hadn't collapsed during the night. That was a pleasant surprise. She moved her fingers, testing the muscles. Her body still felt like it had been put through a cryogenic blender, but at least sensation had returned. Donovan was hunched over the counter in his chaotic kitchen corner, waving a spoon like a conductor of malfunctioning appliances. His coat was gone, replaced by a thick flannel shirt with a hole near the elbow. She cleared her throat. It came out more like sandpaper. "Hey, you're up. Or slightly vertical, at least. That's progress. How's the frostbite treating you?" "Still. Planning to die dramatically in the snow, or are we past that?" She gave him a slow, deliberate stare. "Okay, too soon. My bad, I was just about to make tea. You drink tea, right? Or is that culturally offensive to your species?" She struggled to sit up. He rushed over and helped her lean back against the armrest. His hands were careful but clumsy, like he was afraid she might melt. The kettle let out a shriek that suggested a victory. Donovan poured water into 2 mismatched mugs and rummaged through a jar of dusty tea bags. He returned to her with something steaming and vaguely green. "I made the least toxic blend I have. I think it's green tea or possibly seaweed." She took it with both hands. The mug said, "World's OK est astronaut." She wondered if that was sarcasm or an accolade. He sat across from her on what appeared to be an upside-down crate labeled "Emergency Generator Parts." It squeaked alarmingly. "So, you gonna tell me where you're from?" She sipped the tea. Warmth spread through her chest. She set the mug down carefully. Far. Like Alberta far, or like you'd need a telescope and 3 bribes to the laws of physics. Far, she paused. Second one, he whistled. Knew it. I had a feeling. You're way too symmetrical to be local. Her brow furrowed. Humans, he explained, gesturing vaguely to himself. We're full of asymmetry. Eyebrows don't match, one leg's longer than the other, and nobody's spine is doing what it's supposed to. You, on the other hand, are like a sculpture. An extremely, cold, occasionally sarcastic sculpture. She didn't smile, but her ears twitched just slightly. He leaned forward. How'd you end up here? Her hands tightened around the mug. Ship failed, crash landing, sabotage likely, separated from others, communication array destroyed. Well, that sucks, he said with surprising sincerity. Any chance your friends are nearby, or did they all go full ice cube? She stared at the wall for a moment. Unknown. Donovan nodded. Guess it's just you and me then. Don't worry. I'm great company. I can recite every episode of Star Trek Voyager from memory, even the bad ones. She looked alarmed. That's fair. I only do it when I'm snowed in for too long. A sudden beeping interrupted them. Donovan looked at the monitor mounted near the radio. It blinked with a rhythmic red pulse. Motion sensor, he muttered, crossing the room. Might be a moose again, or a very lost pizza delivery guy. She was behind him in an instant, despite the blanket still trailing from her shoulders. Her movement was silent, her eyes sharp. She studied the screen. It showed a figure, small, lurching, moving erratically near the edge of the ridge behind the cabin. Could be human, Donovan said. Or one of your crew. She shook her head. Too clumsy. Pattern. Inconsistent with Lauren movement, could be a drunk tourist. In this weather, he considered. Desperate drunk tourist. She tapped the screen. Can you enhance this? I mean, sure, if I shout enhance and squint really hard. She gave him a blank look. He sighed and fiddled with the controls. The image resolved slightly. The figure had a strange gait, like it was testing the ground with each step, not from fear, but from calculation. Vara stepped back. Not friendly. Well, he said, reaching for a thermal coat, guess we'd better find out if we're getting company. She grabbed his arm. No, stay here. Let me see. Oh, sure. Let the frostbitten alien woman do the recon. Great plan. She held his gaze. I heal faster than you, and I know what to look for. He opened his mouth, closed it, then gestured grandly. All right, snow elf. But if you die again, I'm not dragging you back a second time. She was already at the door, wrapping herself in gear scavenged from his supplies. As she stepped outside into the bright cold, he called after her, try not to stab anyone unless they really deserve it. The cold greeted her like an old rival, licking at her exposed skin as if it remembered how close it had come to winning last time. Vara moved with careful efficiency, her breath forming short-lived ghosts in the air. She crouched near the crest of the ridge, letting her senses adjust. The figure was still there. Closer now. It wasn't moving like a person. Its arms twitched. Its gait stuttered in jerky, repeating patterns. Then it turned its head. She didn't move, didn't breathe. The thing's face had the suggestion of human structure, but it was too smooth. Its features were simplified, mouth and eyes little more than minimal gestures toward anatomy. It had skin-like synthetic fiber, and its breath came in mechanical bursts. A drone suit, unmanned recon model, obsolete by her standards. Still, someone had activated it, and someone had sent it here. The thing turned again and began trudging away from the ridge. Not toward Donovan's cabin, not directly. It seemed to be mapping, searching. She followed, silent boots pressing into snow. The drone suddenly paused. Its head jerked toward her, and blue light beneath its faceplate flared. She dove. A pulse of energy slammed into the ridge where she'd been crouching, vaporizing snow and rock. Her hood blinked warnings. Unfriendly confirmed. she muttered, rolling behind a dead tree. The drone advanced with an unsettling lurch, limbs readjusting mid-stride like someone had loaded combat algorithms over a walking simulator. Another pulse hissed past her ear. She waited. The drone moved into range. It raised its arm, weapon port cycling. She sprinted forward, low and fast, catching it just before it fired. Her shoulder hit it hard enough to knock it off balance, and her hands grabbed its head in a sharp twist. Too late, she realized this model didn't have a standard disconnect. It screeched, not electronically, but in a strange, high-pitched mimicry of a scream, and its chest lit up with a crimson burst. "Detonator!" she yelled, reflex taking over. She shoved it back and threw herself flat. The explosion was brief, more flash than heat, but it scattered shards of metal into the snow like broken teeth. Her ears rang, her vision stuttered. "Oh, good," said a voice. "You're not dead, I mean, mostly." She blinked. Donovan loomed above her, wrapped in a parka 3 sizes too big and holding a frying pan like a sword. "What are you doing?" she croaked. "Following. You like a responsible host. Also, I saw the flash and thought you might need backup, or band-aids, or a fire extinguisher." "You brought a pan. I forgot my shovel, and technically this is non-stick." She groaned and sat up. It was a drone. Obsolete tech. Someone's using it to search this area. Donovan squinted at the still smoking pieces of machinery scattered across the snow. "Looks like someone duct-taped a mannequin to a blender and told it to go hiking." "Not far off," she said, checking her arm. A gash ran across her forearm, blood welling up in slow droplets. Donovan knelt. "All right, I've got this. Don't move." She expected him to fumble. What she didn't expect was a neatly folded first aid kit, complete with thermal bandages and antiseptic wipes. He worked with quick practiced movements, hands surprisingly steady. "Where did you learn this?" she asked. "Had a dog once, real dumb. Loved running into trees. Also, I was a paramedic for a while." She raised an eyebrow. "Until?" "The incident." "What incident?" He glanced away. "Let's just say, never give a 6-year-old a juice box during a helicopter medevac." She decided not to ask. They returned to the cabin in silence. Inside, the heat felt overwhelming. She shed her layers one at a time, grateful for the numbness. Retreating from her limbs, Donovan threw another log into the fire and collapsed into his chair with theatrical exhaustion. "So we've got mystery drones snooping around. Are we thinking local government, shadowy organization, or alien hit squad?" "Unknown," she replied. "But they're not human, at least not directly controlled. Someone's running automation with very old software." He stared at her. "You realize that sentence makes you sound like a disgruntled IT consultant." She almost smiled. "Almost. Can you track them?" he asked. She nodded. "I'll need to scavenge components. There may be a signal signature buried in the wreckage. If I can rebuild a basic scanner, I can trace their movement." He looked at her like she'd just asked for a microwave made of peanut butter. "I have spare parts. They're mostly from a snowmobile and a vintage toaster, but we could probably make something explode. I need a power core, signal amplifier, and a way to interface without overloading." "Right. So we build a Frankenscanner." "Cool, cool, cool." "Cool." He stood. "You'll assist me?" "Why do you say that like it's a threat?" "Because it is." He raised his hands. "All right. Team effort. One alien scanner coming up. But if this ends with us inventing Skynet in my bedroom, I want on record that I objected." She moved toward the table, already pulling the broken drone's remains from the bag she'd collected. He followed, reluctantly. "Do I at least get to name it?" "No, please." She looked at him utterly flat. "Fine," he beamed. "Then I dub the Blip Finder 3000. She stared for a long moment. "I hate it." "Too late. It's got branding now." And somehow, between the broken wires and the sparks, the ridiculous mug still steaming on the table, and the ancient heater clicking its tired rhythm in the corner, the world didn't feel quite as frozen anymore. By the time the sun dragged itself back over the horizon, Vara had half the scanner assembled. Donovan had insisted on being involved, which translated mostly to asking questions and misidentifying every component. "This one's definitely a capacitor," he said, holding up what was clearly a fused power regulator. "That is a feedback conductor," she replied without looking up. "You sure? Because it kind of looks like a Lego that went through a garbage disposal." She took it back and placed it precisely in the scanner's core shell. "Your visual metaphors are not helpful." The scanner let out a faint chime and displayed a blue grid across the makeshift screen, glitchy but functional. He peered over her shoulder. "That's good, right? Blue is good? Or is this one of those colorblind species things where blue means impending doom? It means the power core is stable for now." "Awesome." He leaned back. "So while you were elbow deep in alien tech, I ran some checks on the weather patterns. There's a storm coming in. Big one. Might shut down the comm tower again." "Time frame?" 36 hours, give or take, which gives us plenty of time to do something dangerous before it hits." She nodded once, satisfied. "Then we test the scanner now." He blinked. "Now? Like, as in outside where the snow is now?" "Yes." "Can't we test it next to the heater while sipping cocoa and pretending it's not? Trying to kill us out there?" She stood, wrapping her cloak around her. "Your heater is inefficient, and your cocoa is made of powder and lies." They trudged out into the snow. Vara held the scanner steady, the grid flickering with each step. Donovan followed close behind, wielding his beloved frying pan again. The scanner pulsed once, then again, a high-pitched tone somewhere between a sonar ping and a disgruntled cat. "There," she said, pointing toward the northern edge of the tree line. "Signal echo, weak but recent." Donovan squinted. "That's near the old logging trail. You think it's another drone?" "No. The signal's too complex. This is a controller trace, which means someone is here, or was, and they're transmitting." They moved quickly, silent except for the crunch of ice beneath their boots. The forest grew denser, branches creaking above them. Every so often the scanner would ping again, guiding them deeper, until they reached a clearing where the snow had been disturbed in deliberate patterns. Vara crouched and touched the ground. Landing struts, light vessel, maybe a dropship. Donovan looked around. "I don't see anything." She held up the scanner. The signal was stronger now, vibrating slightly in her grip. They cloaked it. Low field. Invisibility. Crude but effective. He took a cautious step forward and immediately bonked his head against something very solid and very invisible. "Ow!" he cried, clutching his forehead. "Okay, confirmed. There's definitely a ship here. I just made contact with its hull. Face first." She pressed a sequence of commands into the scanner. The grid shimmered, and slowly the outline of a ship began to materialize, sleek, narrow, and clearly patched together from more than one design philosophy. Donovan stared. "That thing looks like a fork, and a stealth bomber had a very awkward child." "It's a Lauren maid," she said, her voice quieter. "Now, but wrong. It's not from my fleet." "You mean someone from your planet's just cruising around out here looking for you?" She stepped closer to the ship. "No, this isn't a rescue. This is something else." A hiss escaped from the underbelly of the vessel as a panel opened. She tensed, raising the scanner like a weapon. Donovan raised the pan. "Seriously?" she whispered. "Hey," he whispered back. "You've got alien tech, I've got kitchenware. We work with what we have." Something climbed out of the ship. It was humanoid, just tall enough to be unnerving, and it wore a mask that glinted with 6 reflective eyes. No mouth, no expression, just a blank metal gaze that settled directly on Vara. The thing raised a hand in a casual, almost bored wave. "Well," Donovan muttered, "that's not terrifying at all." It spoke, and the voice came out in perfect low and smooth tones. Vara Zell, by order of the Sovereign Protocol, you are classified as rogue entity. Stand down and prepare for extraction. She didn't move. Donovan leaned toward her. Did he just call you a rogue? Is that like space outlaw or more of a bureaucratic insult? I'm not going with him, she said flatly. Wasn't suggesting it, just clarifying the insult. The figure took a step closer. You have violated interstellar quarantine, breached protected systems, and compromised local ecosystems. Donovan scoffed. She saved a raccoon yesterday. You want a medal for that? The masked figure ignored him. Your presence here threatens diplomatic integrity. Vara raised the scanner again. You came here to terminate me. Admitted. The figure paused. Termination is only necessary if you resist. She threw the scanner. It hit him in the chest and exploded with a surge of electromagnetic feedback, sending the figure stumbling back, arms flailing. Sparks flew. The cloak flickered. For a second, the mask cracked just enough to reveal pale skin beneath. Donovan grabbed Vara's arm. Run! They bolted. Behind them, the ship hummed to life, its engines spooling like distant thunder. But Vara knew these ships. They couldn't lift off that fast. They needed a stabilization window. They made it back to the cabin with lungs burning and hearts pounding. Donovan slammed the door shut and turned all 4 locks. So, he gasped, you have enemies. She nodded. Apparently. He doubled over, hands on his knees. And I thought my ex was persistent. She collapsed into the nearest chair and exhaled slowly. This changes things. Yeah, he agreed. Now we're not just hiding from the cold. We're hiding from guys with better cloaking tech than your sarcasm. And in the corner, the heater sputtered twice, coughed and went out. Donovan's first reaction to the heater dying was denial. He stood there, hands on his hips, glaring at the old metal box, like it had just insulted his mother. When that didn't. Help! He tried whispering encouragement. That also failed. Finally, he kicked it once, mildly, then immediately regretted it, as the metal responded with a sharp clank and a puff of something that might have been smoke or ghost residue. Vara sat, unmoving, wrapped in a wool blanket. Her fingers were stained with circuit grease and blood from a split knuckle she refused to let Donovan look at. She watched him fight the heater with what could only be described as tired amusement. You have weapons-grade drones hunting you, he said, poking at a tangle of copper wires. But clearly the biggest threat is a 1967 furnace with abandonment issues. I'd fix it, she replied, but I'm trying to stay alive long enough to enjoy your coffee again. That's sweet, and also incredibly rude to my coffee, which I'll have you know has won 0 awards and deserves it. He straightened up, wiping his hands on a towel that used to be white. All right, we've got 1 semi-operational scanner, 1 aggressively passive-aggressive alien hitman on our tail, a storm moving in, and now no heat. We're officially in survival mode. Define survival mode. Simple, he said. We bundle up, scavenge for fuel, probably eat something expired, and hope the solar battery doesn't die before we can set a tripwire around the cabin. Also, I might make soup, she blinked. Soup is part of your tactical plan. Soup is morale. Don't question it. An hour later, the cabin smelled vaguely of carrots, protein cubes, and mild desperation. Vara stirred the pot slowly with the same expression she'd used while disarming an explosive earlier that day. Meanwhile, Donovan jury-rigged a backup heat source using an old food dehydrator, a strand of Christmas lights, and a stubborn belief that thermal physics could be bullied into cooperation. Vara pointed at the flickering green LED. That's going to melt the insulation. Only if it works, he said, grinning. They ate sitting on opposite ends of the couch, legs wrapped in blankets and shoulders occasionally bumping when the wind shook the walls. Donovan tasted the soup and made a face. Tastes like defeat, I thought. That was your specialty. He looked at her, then raised his spoon in mock salute. Rude. After a moment, he sobered. "He knew your name, didn't he? The masked guy. He called you out directly." Vara nodded. Her ears twitched slightly. She rarely let them show like that. Usually they were hidden beneath her hood or hair. But now, exposed in the half-light, they glinted faintly with heat. "I wasn't supposed to survive the crash," she said. "If anyone came, it would have been for the wreckage, not me. But they found you anyway." She hesitated. "I think someone reported me, or they intercepted one of my power traces. I wasn't careful. Too much signal leakage, and your power grid's not exactly subtle." "Well, I did install a satellite dish out of aluminum foil and hope," he admitted. "So yeah, not subtle." She turned toward him. "You're not safe anymore." "Was I ever?" he asked. Her look said she didn't appreciate rhetorical questions. Still, he didn't flinch. If anything, he leaned in closer, setting his empty bowl down and rubbing his hands together for warmth. "I'm in this now," he said. "Whether I'm safe or not doesn't change that." She stared at him, expression unreadable, then muttered, "You're irrational," he smiled. "Thanks, I practice." The scanner buzzed faintly on the table, drawing their attention. Vara grabbed it immediately. The display stuttered, then formed a new glyph, different from the previous trace. "Not the cloak ship, not a drone," she said. "Another signature. It's weak. Stationary." "How far?" 3 kilometers northwest. Buried, maybe. Could be a beacon, or a cache." Donovan frowned. "Do we go check it?" "It might be a trap, which, to be fair, is what I assume most outdoor activities are." She gave him a look and he sighed. "Fine, but we go in the morning. That storm's gonna chew our faces off. If we walk out now," she didn't argue. That more than anything told him how serious she was. They both tried to sleep, but sleep in a frozen cabin with the threat of alien mercenaries and soup-related regret wasn't easy. At one point, Donovan heard her moving around the cabin. When he peeked, she was dismantling the scanner again, fingers moving quickly, brow furrowed. He left her alone. When he finally drifted off, it was with one hand on a flashlight and the other gripping the handle of the pan, which he now kept beside the bed just in case. They left at first light. The sky was a washed-out grey, snow drifting, like tired confetti. Vara moved with quiet confidence, bundled tight, her eyes scanning constantly. Donovan trudged behind, clutching the scanner and muttering about the injustice of frozen eyelashes. "You're slow," she said over her shoulder. "I'm dramatic," he corrected. "There's a difference." They crested a ridge and descended into a bowl-shaped valley where the snow lay deeper and untouched. The scanner began to beat more frequently, its pulses quickening like a heartbeat. "Here," she said. They dug. The snow gave way to something metallic, a container, half sunk, half frozen. Vara knelt and brushed ice from its surface, revealing an older symbol etched into the lid. "What does it say?" Donovan asked. She hesitated, then said, "Hope." "Well, that's suspiciously poetic." The lid hissed open. Inside were power cells, data shards, and a wrapped object she took with reverent care. Her breath caught. Donovan leaned in but didn't ask. "This was mine," she whispered, "from before the war. I never thought I'd see it again." Donovan looked at the gear. "You think someone planted this for you?" "No," she said. "Someone kept it from being destroyed. Someone who knew I'd come looking someday." She pocketed the object and closed the lid. Again, the wind howled louder now, chasing down the valley like a warning. "We have to go," she said. "Now!" They turned back toward the cabin, both moving faster than before. Above them the clouds thickened, and somewhere far off a mechanical sound echoed once, cold, calculating, and very much not alone. They stumbled through the door just as the storm caught up, slamming into the cabin like a freight train made of knives and spite. Snow surged in after them before Donovan could throw his weight against the door, wrench it shut, and drop the steel bar across the frame. Vara peeled off her outer layers in stiff, calculated movements, as if each button and strap was a memory she didn't want to feel. The object she'd retrieved, still wrapped in its cloth, never left her hands. She didn't even try to hide how tightly she held it. Donovan, on the other hand, had somehow managed to fill half his coat with snow. It tumbled out onto the floor in sad, wet clumps, prompting a string of curses under his breath. "I'm just saying," he muttered, hopping on one leg to remove a boot. "Next time we dig something up from a frozen alien treasure chest, let's at least consider a sled, or a hoverboard, or, I don't know, a flamethrower." "I thought the flamethrower idea was rejected," Vara said absently, studying the scanner, which was now sputtering weak signals between interference spikes from the storm. "Rejected by you, the party of logic and restraint. I, the party of fire and anxiety, would like to revisit the motion." She didn't answer, not because she was ignoring him, but because the screen flashed. One red dot, then another, then three more, all moving toward the cabin. She turned the scanner toward him without a word. His smile evaporated. "Well," he said, "either we're about to be visited by carolers with very strange travel routes, or we've got company." "Combat drones," she said. "Light chassis, high mobility, cloaking ability limited in this weather." "How long before they arrive?" She glanced at the window where snow was already crusting the glass. "Minutes." He stood still for a beat, then walked over to the kitchen and pulled the drawer open. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Looking for my heroic streak," he said, then pulled out the largest kitchen knife they had. "It's shaped like a cleaver." Vara crouched near the hearth, where she'd hidden a partial emitter and the makeshift frequency scrambler they'd worked on together during one of the quieter days. She connected it to the data shard she'd recovered from the cache. Donovan watched the lines of code flood the display. "Please tell me that thing disables drones and doesn't say, 'Alert a galactic extermination squad that we're hiding out with.' A thermos and no plan. It should interfere with their targeting algorithms." "Should. I'm working with relics and spare parts. Would you like to come over here and do better?" He held up the knife. "I'm more of a stabbing specialist." The cabin shook, not from the wind. This was different, heavier, purposeful. Vara's head snapped toward the noise. "Landing!" Donovan moved to the nearest window and peeked through the frost-lined crack. He said, "I don't think they're landing. I think they're climbing. Like little robot squirrels." She grabbed the scanner. The signal pings had separated, two going for the rear, one scaling the roof, and two heading for the front. "They'll breach in less than 1 minute," she said. "Do we have an escape hatch? No. Backup exit? No. Trapdoor to a cozy underground bunker where we can live out our days with pickled beans and regret?" She looked at him. Deadpan. "No." "Right. Cool. Then I'll just stand here dramatically and hope I'm intimidating." She tossed him a portable field disruptor. "Throw this when they enter. Aim low, then run." Running. My specialty. They positioned themselves. She near the back room, him at the main entrance. The wind howled, the walls creaked like old teeth. And then, just as Donovan began composing a heroic last statement in his head, the first drone sliced through the front door like it was paper. He yelped and hurled the disruptor like a discus. It detonated with a low-frequency boom that sent the drone into a drunken spin, colliding with a table and exploding into a dozen twitching pieces. He ducked behind the couch and yelled, "That felt great and terrible at the same time." Another. One burst through the rear. Vara rolled under its legs and jammed her shard-loaded emitter directly against its chassis. The drone convulsed violently, sparks shooting from its joints before it dropped like a dead insect. "2 down," she called. "3 to go," he replied, grabbing the frying pan again. "I swear if I survive this, I'm putting this thing in a museum." One came through the window, shattering glass and snow across the room. It fired an arc beam, carving a line through the wall. Donovan threw the pan. It bounced off the drone's shoulder with a satisfying clang, but zero tactical value. "Worth it," he shouted as Vara launched the second disruptor. It went off near the drone's stabilizer, sending it crashing into the sidewall. The last two entered together, smart enough to coordinate. Vara darted between them, drawing fire away from Donovan, who had found a screwdriver and was now wielding it like a sword. "Go for the joints!" she yelled. He lunged, stabbing the tool into a drone's knee socket. It sparked, stumbled, and shot wildly into the ceiling. Vara finished it with a pulse from the emitter. The final drone backed away, optics whirring, then turned and ran out the back, clumsy in the deep snow but undeniably escaping. "Let it go," Vara said, breathing hard. "It's already sent its report." Donovan sank onto the couch, panting. "Did we win?" "We survived," she said. "Same thing, only with more property damage." She sat across from him, lowering the emitter, now glowing hot. "They're testing us, measuring response time, weaponry, resistance level." "So not just an assassination anymore?" "It's science. It always was, just not the kind with beakers and lab coats." He rubbed his face. "We need allies. You got any galactic pen pals you can call?" She hesitated, then looked at the wrapped object. Carefully she unrolled the cloth. Inside was a communication crystal, fractured but partially functional. "If I can repair this," she said, "I might be able to reach someone. But we'll have to move. This cabin is compromised." Donovan looked around at the shattered door, the ruined wall, the half-melted heater. Then he nodded. "Yeah, you're right. This place is officially off the Airbnb list." She stood, slowly. "There's a mining station 2 valleys west, long abandoned, but its relay dish might still work." He grabbed his coat. "Then let's go salvage a dish and avoid getting murdered." As they stepped outside, the wind slammed into them again, fierce and cold and utterly unimpressed by their tiny rebellion. Donovan pulled his hood tight and muttered, "Next time I decide to help a stranded alien in the woods, remind me to bring more soup." She didn't laugh, but she smiled just a little. They moved through the blizzard like two poorly equipped explorers, one carrying half a dismantled cabin on his back, the other clutching a cracked alien relic like it was a baby bird she didn't trust to live. The snow didn't just fall, it attacked, hurling icy spears sideways, coating everything in stinging white. The mining station emerged like a ghost, half buried in ice, its antenna snapped at an angle, wires trailing like dead veins. It looked about as welcoming as a haunted freezer, but it was shelter, and neither of them were in a position to be picky. Donovan tried the main hatch, which didn't budge. Of course, 80 years abandoned, and this thing still has better security than my apartment. Vara pulled a device from her belt, extended a probe, and jammed it into the access port. A series of strange glyphs flickered across the surface, followed by a satisfying clunk. The door hissed open with a long, reluctant sigh. Inside it was pitch black and even colder, the air stale with the scent of dust and forgotten failure. They stepped into a corridor lined with decaying panels, flickering emergency lights, and an occasional pipe that groaned in protest at their presence. "Home, sweet home," Donovan said, voice echoing. "I give it 3 stars, no minibar." Vara ignored him and walked directly to the control station, brushing ice off the interface. She connected her shard to the terminal and fed it power from one of the surviving cells. The screens blinked to life slowly, like an old man waking. From a suspiciously long nap, the system was Lauren-built, predating even her war years. That meant it was durable, stubborn, and deeply offended by human fingers. Donovan discovered this the hard way when he tried to wipe smudges from the console and got a mild shock for his trouble. "Okay," he muttered. "I get it. No touchy." Vara worked quickly, her long fingers gliding across the alien interface. Symbols pulsed, translating fragment by fragment. Behind her, Donovan tried to pretend he wasn't bouncing slightly with the cold. "You'd think an advanced species would have invented better insulation," he grumbled. "We did," Vara said, "but our engineers had this idea about austerity breeding resilience." That is the worst motivational slogan I've ever heard. "Do you want me to quote the second line?" "Only if it's about coffee or socks." She didn't respond. Instead, her gaze sharpened. A new screen had opened, a map, small and localized. Signals flickered, most of them dormant, but one pulsed with the slow rhythm of a beacon. Not here, not yet, but near. Donovan leaned over her shoulder. "That's not a distress call." "No," she said. "It's a retrieval signal, long range. Someone sent for a drone fleet, and they're sweeping the region looking for active Lauren tech." His stomach twisted. "And we just powered up a pretty obvious signal flare." "Yes, great. I'm sure they'll come with flowers and cake." She ignored him again. Focusing on the relay interface, the antenna was badly damaged, but with enough signal boosting and some very illegal firmware overrides, she might be able to send a burst transmission before it collapsed again. She pulled out the shard from her coat, the one she'd carried since the cache. It was half fused to its housing now, humming gently like it remembered being part of something much larger. With delicate hands, she slotted it into the core transmitter. The station vibrated slightly. Donovan stepped back. "Is that normal?" "It's waking up," she said. "This place was never truly shut down, just waiting." "For what?" She glanced at him. "Me." He opened his mouth to say something witty, then closed it. The lights along the corridor brightened. The walls exhaled frost and stale air as the station powered into a state of partial life. Screens filled with ghost data. The signal spike surged, pinging off long-dead satellites. Vara typed rapidly, entering a contact protocol so ancient it had to be myth. Then she spoke into the transmitter. Not in English, not even in the soft, angled tone she used when muttering to herself, but in the true Lauren code speech. Every syllable rang like a chime struck underwater. It wasn't a message so much as a memory broadcast outward like a ripple from a single drop, then silence. Nothing replied. The system showed no bounce, no acknowledgement. Donovan stepped closer. "Did it?" The console lit up again. One line, in Lauren, simple and glowing. "We hear you." Vara went rigid. Donovan grinned despite himself. "Hey, you're not alone after all." Then the entire console sparked violently. The shard glowed too hot to touch. Vara yanked it free just before the surge could melt it into slag. "Someone jammed the return frequency," she said. "Intercepted. They know where we are." A deep, grinding noise echoed from outside. Not thunder, not wind. Something heavy had just landed. Vara grabbed her emitter. Donovan reached for his favorite knife, slightly bent, slightly useless, but very pointy. "This place have a back door?" he asked. Vara pointed. "Maintenance shaft to the ridge." They sprinted. The walls trembled. A voice boomed through the station's decaying speakers, not in English, not in Lauren, but in something twisted between. Synthesized, cold. "Return the shard, Vara, or we take it from your bones." Donovan winced. "You ever notice how bad guys love bone threats? They're very popular." Vera muttered behind them. The station's main door cracked inward with a shriek. Outside, shapes loomed in the snow, tall, metallic, walking on legs that bent the wrong way. Their red optics cut through the fog like surgical lights. Donovan ducked into the shaft. "I changed my mind. 3 stars, too drafty." They climbed up. Into darkness, the shard tucked tight in Vara's coat, and behind them the station began to burn. The cave wasn't much of a safe haven, but it was dry and out of sight, and the residual warmth from the geological fault line made it feel like a vacation spa compared to the frostbitten hell outside. Donovan lay on his back, with his arms behind his head, staring up at the rough ceiling. One of the rocks looked like a disgruntled frog, which seemed poetic in a cosmic, mildly irritating way. Vara sat cross-legged near the heat vent, eyes closed, hands resting on her knees. The shard hovered between her palms, pulsing gently. Not a weapon, not a beacon. Something else now. She didn't talk much, but when she did, it mattered. So Donovan didn't interrupt. Instead, he focused on peeling open a ration pack that smelled faintly of regret and artificial cheese. "So," he said eventually, chewing with heroic effort, "any chance that thing can summon a rescue ship? Maybe one with less homicidal robots." "On it, no ships," she murmured. "They were destroyed, all but one. Let me guess, that one's buried somewhere we can't reach and guarded by something with a name like Bone Crusher Prime." She cracked one eye open. "No, it's in orbit, but it's listening now." The transmission reached the dormant relay net. I connected with a signal node, one they forgot to monitor. It's slow, fragmentary, but they know I'm alive. One of ours. "You're telling me a ship full of your people might come pick us up?" "Not a ship full," she said. "Just one, an old model, automated. But I gave it new coordinates. It will land soon." He sat up straighter. "You sure it's not bringing reinforcements for the metal creeps who toasted the station?" They couldn't mimic the signature. "This is ours." She hesitated, then added, "I think." "Well, that's reassuring." They both turned when footsteps crunched outside. Not mechanical this time. Too light, too human-sized. Donovan reached for his knife. "You really need to build me a laser gun or something." "You'd cut off your own toe." It'd be a heroic sacrifice. The figure that stepped into view was wrapped in snow-draped armor, a blend of scavenged tech and wild insulation. At first, Donovan braced for a firefight. Then the helmet came off, and beneath it was a teenage girl with enormous eyes and a very lopsided grin. "Hi," she said, raising a gloved hand. "Don't shoot or stab or laser." Vara stood slowly, the shard dimming in her hands. The girl dropped her pack and knelt. "You're Lauren, I knew it. My father used to tell stories about your people. He served in the old diplomatic corps, said you had ears like ancient gods and expressions like you were always judging a soup contest." Donovan relaxed marginally. "Well, she does that. The judging part, I mean." The girl beamed. "Name's Lyra. I followed the pulse beacon when it spiked. Not many of us left who can read the old codes, but I've been scavenging old tech for years. When I saw the frequency, I figured either it was bait or something important." Vara stepped closer, her voice soft. "You decrypted the beacon." "Part of it. Enough to know it wasn't hostile, and to know it was lonely." Donovan glanced at Vara, who was very carefully not looking at him. Lyra pulled a rusted module from her coat. "I've got a portable uplink. If your relay is talking, I can amplify the signal. But we need to be in the clear when the dropship makes orbit." Donovan stood. "Back into the blizzard, huh?" "Why is it always the blizzard?" Lyra said with a wink. They hiked out at first light. The sky was clearing, thin, pale blue, no longer the color of imminent frostbite. High above, the first hints of motion streaked like shooting stars. The ship was coming. Slowly, cautiously, they reached the ridge by midday. The snow glistened like glass. Lyra's device hummed as it synced with Vara's shard. The shard responded, like it had found a long-lost friend. Data flowed, coordinates locked, then the sky screamed. A final hunter drone, larger, meaner, sleeker than the others, dropped through the atmosphere like a sword. It landed hard, carving a trench of burning ice, its metal limbs unfolded with awful grace. Its voice was a static whisper amplified to thunder. "Vara, the shard, surrender." She didn't speak, just looked at Donovan. He smiled. "You throw, I'll distract. You'll die. Probably, but heroically, possibly while yelling something cool. Before she could argue, he sprinted right at the thing, hollering like a lunatic. The drone turned, aiming a plasma spike, just in time to catch a rock square in its sensor port. It flinched. Lyra's uplink pulsed. Vara stepped forward, calm and slow. She extended the shard, not to the drone, but to the sky. Above them, the clouds parted. The ship emerged, sleek and black, its hull reflecting fractured sun. It didn't descend like a rescue, it descended like a verdict. The drone turned upward and hesitated. Vara threw the shard. It streaked upward, caught in a tractor beam. The ship accepted it like a missing key, its weapon pods deployed with a shimmer of quiet menace. One clean, soundless beam lanced downward, slicing through the drone like butter through frost. It collapsed, limbs twitching, optics dimming. Donovan blinked. "Remind me not to tick you off when you have friends." Minutes later, the ship landed. Not a warship, not a luxury vessel, just functional, built to endure. Inside it was quiet and warm, clean, the kind of silence that didn't feel empty. It felt safe. Lyra stayed behind. She waved from the ridge, already setting up a new transmitter. From the drone's corpse. "You two go be legends, I'll hold the fort. Or you know the pile of scorched metal." Donovan looked back as the hatch closed. "She's going to take over the planet, isn't she?" Undoubtedly. Vara stood beside him as the ship rose, the planet growing smaller. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. He nudged her shoulder. "So, where to now?" Her voice was soft. "Home," he grinned. "Mind if I tag along? I've got excellent knife skills and mediocre jokes." She looked at him, and for the first time since he'd found her in the snow, she smiled. Not just with her mouth, but with something deeper. "You already came farther than anyone." The end.